Hello and welcome to the 94th Melbourne AWS user group and our second in isolation. As you can see from the background behind me, I've moved house. I'm not actually attempting to run a live event off the top of Telstra 4G connection at the moment. I actually have proper internet, so everything seems to be going well so far. Hopefully tonight's going to be just as good as it was last night, or last month, if not better. We definitely have some great presentations lined up for tonight. And so let's just get into it. I even have a wheelie chair so I can slide over. Okay, so this is our agenda for tonight. It's the same structure pretty much as last month. We've got the introduction on now. We will then do our new segment with Arjen and Friends. I think I might rename it Arjen and Friends. Our first presentation then is from Jesus, who's going to talk us through automating AWS migrations. He recorded this one for us last night, actually quite late, so thank you very much for that. Looking forward to watching it in full. We'll have a quick intermission after that. I'm going to do the What's On segments during the intermission. We're going to have a bit of a look at what has been on and the content is still available, what's coming up, and what's still to come. And then Arjen stepped up and has put together a second presentation for us around using Image Builder, which I'm looking forward to as well. We then have just a quick wrap up, and the same as last month, we will have a Zoom post event, post live stream. I'm not sure, something. So the same as last month. We will collect the questions as we go. Feel free to ask questions either in our Slack channels. We shall find out information on how to join Slack a little bit later. On Twitter using the AWS Melb hashtag, or in the chat on the YouTube stream you're all watching right now. At the end of each presentation, the presenter will join me or Arjen, and we'll go through some of the questions that you guys asked. Comments are always welcome at any time, Drew. Feel free to ask comments during the same channels as before. Anything that we feel is like a good comment, we'll show on the screen during the stream, so to get everybody involved. But we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and we're very happy to have Enabler back on for the second year in a row as our gold sponsor. Particularly during the current times, they've been there for us and been very supportive, so we're very grateful to them. We're also very grateful to our silver sponsors, who are equally as important. Like between the three of them, they've managed to keep us going through this time, and we're planning on our way out of the other end. So, little bit about who we are. I'm Rob, or Bok on Slack, Bok _ on Twitter, and my co-host, co-presenter, fellow organizer is Arjen, who you'll see during the news segment. We don't work for AWS. None of the main organizing community works for AWS. We're all independent of AWS. So feel free to bring whatever experiences and opinions you have to our events, and please feel free to contribute. This is a safe place we can say, negative things about AWS if that's what it's called for. Like, we're not going to paint it with a nice pretty brush or anything like that. We'll just call it as we see it. And the place to do that is our Slack channel, or Slack team. We have around 600 to 800 people, members on the Slack team. And there's a great chatter during the day, people asking questions, discussing console issues and other fun things that we encounter in the course of a professional and working with AWS products. We also have places to share jobs in the jobs channel, places to get involved in volunteering. We discuss outages at length as well. Like, everybody pops up to say, hey, is this happening to you? And then the notifications come through, and then we work through resolutions. And we have a general channel to discuss new stuff that comes through. That's the highlights. There's a lot more on there. Feel free to jump on and get involved. Speaking of getting involved, we're always looking for volunteers, either speakers, sponsors, or volunteers in general. Like, there's a lot of things that need to be done. I have a backlog of videos that need to be edited, for example, that would love some help with. running these events, just general admin stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. So on that note, I will switch over to our news team, and we'll see you back shortly.
That's going on.
Yeah, so it looks, looking for help. It's great for looking for PI data that you didn't know was there. And
I haven't seen comments that there's no audio.
Oh.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's start from scratch. Thank you, everybody, for letting us know. Welcome to What's New. Finally in Sydney. Yep. So, cool. We've got Macy and Fraud Detector as new services. Macy has come here after about 2 years, in which it didn't have any expansion beyond its original regions. And it came with a nice cost reduction as well of up to 80%.
Yeah, which is great to see, because Macy's one of those services that on paper you look at it and you go, that's great. I really need that service to check for PI data in places that it's impractical for a human to go through and find the problems, right? So I think what Macy's doing is it really fits there's a real niche that it fits, but the price was kind of prohibitive. So an 80% price reduction, I think they say 80 to 90% price reduction is really welcome, I think.
Yeah. And so the other fraud detector I mentioned, which is in preview, which is basically what it says on the tin. I haven't played around with it myself, so I don't know how good it is. And speaking of price reductions, we have a price reduction for inter-region data transfer, which I guess technically is in Sydney, because Sydney was one of the regions for which it was reduced, but obviously it's not limited to Sydney by being multi-region.
Yeah, so there was four regions that got the benefit here: South America, Middle East, Cape Town, and Sydney. But we got a very nice price reduction. So I did the numbers on it. It's 30%, a 30% reduction, which is similar to what the Middle East got. So yeah, it's a substantial benefit, I think, if you're doing a lot of data transfer out of Sydney.
Yeah.
Interesting thing on that one, though, that they call it DTIR, but it's inter-region data transfer inter-region. So I don't know whether that's just why it's changed, why it's called a different thing when it's an acronym. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
Slightly. That's okay, right? We're used to that from you.
I don't know.
So
that's what I do.
As always, we cut it up into sections after the what's new. also after the Sydney. So on the serverless side, there wasn't a lot this time, but still a couple of these are quite interesting. Obviously, everybody was waiting for Workmail to support Lambda.
Yep.
As that is obviously the easiest way to filter your emails.
Yep. Yep.
That said, have you done much with the Eventbrite guy?
No, I haven't. The announcement here that I kind of thought was had a lot of potential is the step functions code build integration. So if you've got a complex build job that pipelines don't cater for, it looks like it could be quite interesting. It lets you orchestrate like multiple builds in parallel, and you can create branching logic to say run tests or not run tests depending on what stage of development you're at. So that looks like it's quite a nice useful new feature for step functions, I think.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, in the interest of time, let's just move on to containers. Boring in a way, but also very useful is EKS supports Kubernetes 1.16. More interesting, potentially, though, is I don't even know how to properly pronounce this. CDK 8S.
CDKs?
CDKs, yep. Which is a CDK for Kubernetes.
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, thanks, Alexa.
Oh, sorry.
One of the other things that was announced too was blue-green deployment support for ECS, which I seem to recall was a question on an exam once that was designed to sort of trick you up whether it supported it or not, and it didn't, and it made people sad. So I think now you've got blue-green deployment support for ECS.
It actually already supported a while back, but it was now added to CloudFormation, I believe.
Ah, right. Well, there you go.
Which is interesting in its way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Cool.
seeing comments that CDK 8S works well, so that's good to see. Other interesting one potentially is the multi-architecture manifest file, so that you can now have separate containers, container images in ECR for Intel and ARM processors, which is nice if you use the new M6G type instances. But let's move on to Dev and Ops, which seems to have a lot of code guru this month.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got nothing on this really. CodeGuru at the moment I think still only supports Java. I guess if I was a Java dev I might get excited by it, but I think that's currently the case. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's still just Java, I believe. But at least it now supports Bitbucket for people who use that. It's slightly cheaper, and I quite like actually that code build now has the test reporting GA. It came out a couple months ago in preview, and it basically lets you have what you always want, which is actually seeing the reports for your tests inside your tooling for it.
Cool.
So, yeah. Then security. I snuck in another container one here. Because that's how I am.
That's what you do. That's how you roll. Yep.
So the EKS Best Practices Guide for Security, it's basically just a guide with recommendations for how to make your EKS cluster nice and secure.
Mm-hmm. I think this slide has the candidate for didn't it always do that? In the last one you've got there, which is the zero downtime external IDP certificate rotation. It's one of those features that you see it announced and you go, oh, couldn't you always do that? Okay.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah. And I guess the other announcement here that might be, it's kind of topical. I guess it's of the time is the SAML2 authentication on client VPN. I guess they're putting some work into things that support remote work. So I guess enabling SAML2 authentication on client VPN is going to be useful for a bunch of corporates that have to support their workers suddenly VPNing into their environments rather than being able to use the local network.
Yeah.
Have you seen?
Go
on. Yep. No, you go.
No, you.
I was just going to ask you whether you've seen the new user interface in Artifact. I'll have a look.
I haven't looked at it myself.
Right.
I always want to take a moment, though, whenever Artifact comes up, to point out that this is not a service where you can store your binaries and other artifacts.
Yeah.
But instead, it stores your security reports and things like that.
Compliance documentation.
I know that I have gotten confused about that name quite a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of badly named services. That's definitely one of them. It's very, very much not what you'd expect it to be.
Yeah. Before we hand over to Jesus, some other cool stuff that came out. Amazon Kendra, which is the new, potentially not cheap AI-driven super search engine that hooks into your systems.
Yep. Yeah, it's gone GA, and they've also announced a bunch of different connectors for it, so you can connect it to Salesforce and ServiceNow, and I guess there'll be a whole bunch of probably SharePoint, I guess, if you have to. Does it come out that I don't like SharePoint? Anyway, so I guess there'll be a lot of other connectors for sort of enterprise data repositories. Yeah. But the natural language search features, it's pretty cool having, I guess we've all seen it demoed probably, but if you haven't seen it demoed, it is quite cool. And it finds sort of related records. It thinks a bit laterally because it's using machine learning to sort of, I guess, figure out what people mean when they ask for something.
Yeah. Cool. UltraOne, another one of those services with a great name. Mm-hmm. This is basically an additional hot layer of caching for your Elasticsearch cluster. Mm-hmm. Potentially really nice. Personally, I'm more interested, though, in the new instance type.
Oh, yeah. But they're not available in Sydney, I don't think, yet, are they?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, I saw them, but thought, oh, that's a bit of a shame.
Yep.
So the one other thing that I'll just chuck in too is the extra trusted advisor checks. So there's an extra 5 trusted advisor checks that actually would be quite useful for anyone who's on business or enterprise support. It'll do a bit of reserved instance optimization recommendation and look at your savings plan data, basically check your usage of Fargate and EC2 and Lambda and help you come up with a better plan than what you're on, basically.
Cool. Anyway, that's where we'll leave it for tonight. If you're not too tired of listening to myself, Guy, and Jean-Manuel, who was with me last month, the AWS User Group podcast, every month after the meetup, a couple of days later, we will record a longer session where you can hear the full rants from Guy and more news. So, and with that, I'll hand it over to Rob.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Guy and Arjen. We now have our first presentation from the night from Jesus. As I mentioned before, he recorded this for us yesterday. I feel for the guy not trusting his internet connection. I would be in there. So Jesus has been in AWS for a couple of years now after a big gap away from IT. He keeps up with all of the new service announcements as best as he can, tries to have a go at some of them, which can be a bit of a challenge. He advocates for automation wherever he can, and uses AWS native services and tools. What's not to like about all of that? So here is his presentation on automating AWS migrations. Where is that button?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me today in the Melbourne meetup. Today's session is on AWS migrations and how to automate them, and so we accelerate the move to the cloud. I recorded this session mainly because I can't trust my internet connection, but I'm also around for questions at the end if anyone wants to ask more details. So bear with me a few minutes and then you can ask whatever questions you have. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm an AWS Solutions Architect with AC3 based out of Sydney. Jumping on the Melbourne meetup for the second time since everyone is going online, this time presenting. An intro for today's session. The topic is about automating AWS migrations, but in particular about a service called Cloud Endure from AWS. I thought it'd be more interesting if we run through a demo. So there's like literally 3 slides, which I'll cover quickly, and then we jump straight to the AWS and the Cloud Endure consoles and see how it all fits together. Okay, so what's the problem we're trying to solve? A migration to AWS can involve migrating hundreds or thousands of VMs. Now, as opposed to moving a few VMs that you can rebuild from scratch, when you get to bigger numbers like hundreds or even thousands, this can become a very long process and it's more than likely not ideal. So what you want to do is you want to get everything in AWS as quickly as possible and start re-architecting to make use of all the native services and everything that is available in AWS. Here is where a service like Cloud Endure fits really well. Cloud Endure was acquired by AWS in early 2019, so around a year and a half ago, and it offers both migration and disaster recovery options. Today's demo is around migration to AWS. So some of the benefits from by using Cloud Endure, think of reducing the cost of cloud migration by removing the need to rebuild, provide highly automated lift and shift solution, and we'll see this in the demo, quickly rehosts hundreds or thousands of VMs to AWS. Since it's automated, it makes no difference for the service to migrate 10 or 500 VMs. Requires a really small cutover window because it keeps the source in sync constantly. So we don't need to wait for full transfers. And it's free to use for migration. So no cost of using Cloud Endure at all. All right, so how does it work? We have the on-prem environment on the left in this diagram with a number of VMs running and in production, and the AWS environment on the right-hand side. First thing we do is we deploy the Cloud Endure agent onto all the VMs on-prem. These agents will start communicating with Cloud Endure and will start syncing with the replication server that Cloud Endure provisions in the staging area in AWS. So there's a replicator server right in the middle, and all the agents are replicating to it. Then Cloud Endure starts creating EVS volumes for every VM that we're replicating, and the replication starts. This is block level replication and it's continuous. So constantly replicating any change. And by the way, we can do this replication through a VPN or a direct connect if we don't want to traverse the internet. The initial sync might take a while, but once it's in sync, we can expect almost no lag between what we have on-prem and what we have in the staging area. For every VM, we configure a blueprint, which tells Cloud Endure how we want to configure each of the EC2 instances that will spin up once migrated. So things like instance size, subnet, security group, IAM role, for example, all these things will be configured in that blueprint. When we want to migrate, we have everything in sync. We basically trigger the migration and CloudEndure launches a converter job to modify all the volumes so they can boot and run on AWS. And once converted, using those blueprints that we configured earlier, launches new EC2 instances in the Target VPC, and our migration is complete. Okay, let's go to the console and see how it all works. Okay, so I've provisioned a number of VPCs. One will simulate the on-prem environment. That's the CloudEndure source VPC. Another one will be the staging area. That's the CloudEndure stage VPC, where our replicator server will run. And the last one will be the target area. And that's where our VMs will end up, in the target CloudEndure target VPC. If we go to the CloudEndure console, which will load in a minute, CloudEndure is organized around projects. So I've already created a project, AC3 demo for today. And the first thing I did was to configure the replication settings. So here what we're telling is CloudEndure how our project is organized. So we are migrating from other infrastructure to the AWS Sydney region. We're telling the instance size and types for the different types of replication server and converter server. And we're telling what subnet within the CloudEndure stage VPC we want to use to provision the replication server. And also a security group for that replication server. This has all been provisioned by me beforehand. So once this is all ready, the next thing we need to do is to deploy the agent into the VMs in the source VPC. So what I'll do is I'll simulate 5 VMs on EC2 and deploy the CloudEndure agent on those. Okay, we can see the EC2 instances running. I've given them clear names like CloudEndure source EC2 1 to 5. So we identify which ones they are. And if we go to the CloudEndure console, we'll see that these 5 VMs have already started initial sync, but 4 of them, the 5th is just about to start. This might take a while, so I'll pause the video and let it sync, and we'll save some time there because this might take a few minutes. All right, so while the initial sync is in process, I'm going to start setting up all the blueprints for all the VMs. So here's how you set up one blueprint. The first thing you need to tell CloudEndure is the machine type. I'm going to use T2 micros for the demo. Launch type on demand. Subnet. We want to make sure this goes into the target VPC. So one of the subnets within the target VPC. I'm going to pick this public subnet too. Security group. I have a security group created as well. So ready to use. But just create private IP, assign one. We don't want to do anything specific with that. No elastic IP. Let's create a public IP so we can reach this server once it's provisioned, and attach an IAM role to it that I have already created. And the last thing, which is quite important, especially from a budget point of view, make sure your disk is the appropriate type. So I'm going to use SSD, that's your GB2 type, not the IOPS, so those are more expensive. Then we save the blueprint, and this VM will be ready to be launched in the target VPC. We'll do this for all the 5 VMs, and we'll be ready to deploy. Now, it might seem like there's a lot of work to do in terms of blueprints for every single VM if we've got 100 or hundreds of them. CloudEndure has an API, so we could definitely script the whole process and create all the blueprints programmatically a lot faster. All right, so we can see here that the 5 VMs have performed the initial sync completely. So now in continuous data replication, this means that any change in the source VM will be replicated to the EVS volumes via the replicated server. So the 5 of them are in that state right now. And we've also configured the blueprints for the 5 VMs. So we telling Cloud Endure what instance type and size, what security group, what subnet in which VPC, IAM role, everything we have configured in order to be able to launch the EC2 instance as we want it to be launched. So now we've got 2 options to trigger the migration, and that's test mode and cutover mode. They basically work really very similar. The good thing about the test mode is we can launch it as many times as we want, and it's actually going to log when each of these VMs have been launched in test mode. So we've got a bit of a trail of what we've done in terms of testing. All right, so I'm gonna select all 5, and I'm gonna trigger the test mode replication or migration. We click continue, and we've got a job in progress, which we can look at in here. So it just started, and the first thing it's going to do is going to wait for the final snapshot or the latest snapshot to be ready. So it's basically checking that everything has been replicated, we're not missing anything, and we've got the actual latest state of the source VMs before it actually starts the process of converting and launching them into the VPC. All right, so Cloud Endure has finished waiting for the latest snapshot, which means it now has the latest snapshot from the source VMs, and it's ready to start creating the final VM. So it says that it started creating or doing machine conversions. If we go to the EC2 console, we will soon see the Cloud Endure machine converter, and we'll probably see five coming up. So one of those servers each is going to convert the EVS volume that belongs to each one of the source instances. So if we were migrating 15, we'll see 15 machine converters. In this case, we've got 5. So it's launching now. It's running. There's a bit of an initiation process in this machine converter instances. It'll take a bit of time, but it's all managed by Cloud Endure. We don't really need to do anything other than just wait for it to happen. And we can keep track here in the job progress how things are going. We'll also see in the console, once the machine converters have completed the job, they'll be shutting down themselves automatically. Again, we don't have to take care of absolutely anything that refers to the instances and the resources that Cloud Endure is provisioning to do whatever task it needs to do at any given point. We can see that the machine converters are already shutting down and terminating, which means they've already done their job. The EVS volumes are ready to be used for spinning up the target EC2 instances. So really, really fast. We see here that the machine conversion is barely took 2 minutes to convert those 5 instances, and it's already started creating the replicas for 3 of those instances. So we'll soon see 5 instances being 5 replicas being created. We've got all the Cloud Endure converters terminated now, apart from one which is shutting down, and we can already see 3 instances starting. These are the target instances. All right, so now we've got 5 already starting. If we go back to the EC2 console, we'll see that we've got 5 instances that are starting. CloudEnjoy will stop them for a minute to perform some of the tasks it needs to perform, and then it will start them again. If we keep refreshing, we'll see that they will start up again. So just to review again, the machine converters, they're all terminated. Those 5 instances that barely run for less than 5 minutes. So we're barely not paying nothing for those. The replication server is still running. If we're performing any changes in the source, we're not going to see those now, but we're still replicating in case we want to trigger another test. We've got this 5 source EC2 instances. I haven't turned them off. I've done nothing to them. And we've got the 5 new migrated instances that are starting and running. So we see here that 5 new instances have come up, and 3 of them have been renamed. So one of the things that CloudEnjoy lets you do is configure a script or a series of scripts that will run on boot time once you migrate the instance. And I've used those scripts to basically just change the name of the EC2 instance. So we see that's the migrated, and then it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we see that the exact replicas, but just migrated of the source instances. That's the whole idea. So we've got 1 more that will be changing in any minute. If we go back to the CloudEnjoy console, we see that the job has finished. So if we look at the time, apart from that I did this last night, we see that the job started at 10:57, and it's finished at 11:04. So that's less than 10 minutes. We did actually migrate the whole 5 instances without really doing much. If we want to test whether this works or not, I configured server so we can test it. So the source instances have this, and that's the source number 1. If we go to the migrated number 1 and we get the public DNS, I did the same thing with the script. I renamed this, so I actually migrate this one and make some changes to the website. You could change DNS, you could change a lot of different things, like connection strings to a database. The limit is based on whatever you really need to do. Okay, so after the demo, a bit of a recap and some of the benefits of using CloudEnjoy for your cloud migration to AWS. So CloudEnjoy reduces the cost of your cloud migration by removing the need to rebuild your workloads in AWS from scratch. It provides a highly automated lift and shift solution to AWS, and we saw how by setting up the blueprints and deploying the agent, we basically set up to perform the migration. It quickly rehosts hundreds or thousands of VMs into AWS. So I mentioned that CloudEnjoy has an API. And that's really helpful when we move into big numbers, because we can, for example, configure blueprints programmatically instead of having to go manually 1 by 1. It requires a small cutover windows because we are syncing continuously. We still run our workload in production on-prem, and when we want to perform the cutover to AWS, we don't need to wait for everything for a full snapshot to move across. We basically have to complete the sync, and that's going to take within seconds, plus the whole process of conversion and relaunching, which we saw it took around 5 minutes. And the other benefit is that it's free to use for migrations. So we don't need to pay absolutely anything for Cloud Endure, for using Cloud Endure. We do pay for the EC2 resources that Cloud Endure will spin up for replication and conversion, but we're not paying for the tool itself. If you want to use Cloud Endure for disaster recovery, which is the other feature of Cloud Endure, you will have to pay for that one. All right, so thank you very much. And I'll be answering any questions that you may have now live, not recorded, obviously. Thank you.
Okay, Jesus, thank you for that wonderful presentation. It was interesting, and I don't really want to move thousands of VMs anytime soon, but if I did, I now have a tool for it. So there were some questions already throughout the presentation. If anybody has questions, they can still ask them now, and we'll just add them to all the things that will force Jesus to answer. So let's start with the first one. This one came from Dawn. Do you pay for the EBS volumes pre-migration?
Yeah, so you don't pay for Cloud Endure for using the tool if you're using it for migration, but you do pay for all the resources that you use. So you pay for your EBS volumes, you'll pay for your EC2 instances for the replicators and the converters, and obviously you pay for the instances, your target instances once everything is migrated. If you, just to cover a little bit more pricing, if you use it for disaster recovery, which is the other option in Cloud Endure, you do pay for that one, a fee of around $20 a month per VM, US dollars, that is.
Yeah, cool. And next question from Ludo. Apologies if I mispronounce your name. Can we get any notifications from Cloud Endure? Yeah,
so you can get some notifications. I hope this is what you're asking in terms of what's going on with your project, like if your replication has stopped or stalled or stuff like that. So that some types of events that are occurring in your project, you can get notified on those.
Okay. I am not seeing any other questions come up at the moment. If nobody has anything, then I can just say thank you, Jesus.
No worries.
Wait.
Thank you, guys.
Somebody just came up. A follow-up question from Ubo. Also, is AWS planning to add it as a service instead of going to the website? Do you have any idea about that?
I don't know. And look, you still have to go through the website. Support, you don't go through the support anymore. You go through AWS. I had an issue with the support once, and you have to use AWS support. But documentation, you still refer to the Cloud Endure website. So I think they're sort of halfway through. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of stuff in the AWS website, but not everything seems to be moved across.
Okay, I'm sure it sounds like they are working on it, so that will probably get fixed at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, in that case, this time for real. Thank you very much, Jesus. And we'll switch over to Rob again.
Okay, thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Thanks.
All right, so we're up to our intermission portion of the evening. To this week's or this month's intermission, I'm going to take a bit of a look at what's going on in the world of AWS at the moment with the various news and announcements and other online sources of content, because there's a lot. But we're not going to go through all of it. We're just going to pick off the stuff that looks really good. So slide over again. Nope, not those slides. Wrong button. This one. First up, next month, it is June already. Towards the end of next month, we have the AWS Serverless Community Day, which is held online. I think this is the first one of those that they've had. But it looks like it's going to be a great day. You can register on the website down here. There we go. You can grab more information from there as well, obviously. We also have the general AWS Community Day, or days, because there's actually 2 of them, following a week later, or 2 weeks later in July. Again, fully online. Registration is on the link at the bottom of the screen there. And we're very fortunate to be joined by our very own Melbourne AWS community hero, Pete, who is one of the hosts of those events. Let me just bring Pete in here. Oh, hang on. I need to turn my slides off first. There we go. Where's my interview button? There. Here he is.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for the plug.
That's all right. So we're putting on online events this year.
This is it. It's all happening. It's really the first time. So I'm really excited to co-organize and co-host these 2 events. So like you said, it's the first time we're doing a serverless community day. Something very cool, very different. I'm fortunate to be an AWS serverless hero. I work in Melbourne. I've been working with AWS for years, and
yeah, I remember.
And as a hero, AWS has asked me to help out and co-host the first event and then the second community day. So the serverless community day, which is taking place on June 26th, first time, very interesting. We have Tim Wagner keynoting the event. So Tim, if you don't know, he invented Lambda. He wrote the original white paper for Lambda and then became the GM for serverless at AWS and was the GM for a few years. So I think if there's one person who knows Lambda and serverless,
yeah, I'd say so.
It's Tim Wagner. So Rob, I hope you've signed up.
I have, yeah. Is this the first serverless community day anywhere in the world or just in Australia?
I think so. I don't think anybody else has done it. So it's a bit of an experiment for us, for our community. So please, I hope that everybody signs up, and I hope to see everybody there. And there will be prizes and giveaways. So that's very cool too.
Cool. I know how much work it is to organize an online event that runs for 2 hours, so I can't imagine what 3 days of this is going to look like.
Rob,
I think you guys are still doing call for paper, right, too?
Sorry?
I think you're still doing calls for paper registration, is that right?
Yes. So for both events, we are still running our CFP. It is open until end of Friday, this Friday. So if you do want to submit a talk, and I encourage you to do so, please go to the URLs that Rob you showed earlier, and please submit a talk. We want our Aussies to be talking. So please do it.
Great.
So that's serverless community day in June, and then it will be followed up by our kind of the more general community day, which is, like you said, running over 2 days, so 6th and 7th of July. We will have VP and Chief Evangelist of AWS keynoting. Jeff Barr will do the first keynote, and I think we'll try to do something different this time. We will try, and please don't hold me to this, but we will try to do a live Q&A with Jeff. So you'll be able to ask, or anybody will be able to ask questions and have Jeff answer them on the spot. So that is kind of exciting. I hope we can pull it off.
This is going out live, right?
Oh God, can we all undo? Jeff, I didn't say this. I did not say this. But look, if it does work out, it'll be kind of cool. So please, think of questions that you might want to ask. And again, the CFP is open, so please submit a talk if you're interested. But in any case, we hope to see you attend.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter. I'll pop those links back up on the screen.
Thanks so much.
And good luck. This is going to be a lot of work.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a reminder of those links, and thanks very much to Peter for joining us. The Serverless Community Day, June 26th. You can access that at boc.sh/serverless-days, or you can just search for it, of course. And then the Community Day itself on July 6th and July 7th. And again, boc.sh/community-day, or just Google it. That's how I find things as well, so, either way. Of the other things that have been on, or are on, or whatever the case might have been, the AWS Summit was held earlier this month. And although the experience on the day was a little bit mixed, the content itself is actually really good, and the content itself is online and still available to be watched. And I think that's probably the key outcome that you want anyway, right? So, and the link down there, they have all of the on-demand videos are still available. Get on there, watch the things. There's a lot of really good information in there. I especially enjoyed the security track, so check that out. Something that might be on, we don't really know. They haven't cancelled it yet. They haven't told us that they're moving it online yet. They haven't really told us what's going on yet with reInvent. There's a big notice plastered on the website that says they're monitoring the situation. But I don't know, just keep an eye on it. If they're going to do something, whatever the case might be, I don't think they'll cancel it like Reinforce. There's another series of online events that are going on now, the Serverless First Functions. They had the first one last week. There is another one tomorrow, US time. And I feel like the first line of the description sums it up pretty well. It's like, consider this event your complete builder's guide to serverless applications. So if you're looking to get started with serverless apps, or you're looking for a refresher, or you never know what you might learn new, definitely watch this one. I don't know if they're going to make these available on demand, but they're definitely, registration is still open, so you can still catch this tomorrow. Something a bit closer to home. They haven't announced this yet, so this is a Melbourne user group exclusive, but the Programming and Tools event for June, yes. On Wednesday the 10th, you're going to be building observable applications with Fargate, and our very own Duke of Fargate, Arjen Schwarz, will be running that one. And because we don't know any borders, the Singapore group is on as well in June. It's a bit later in the evening, but they're doing a few things differently. This is their first online-only event, and it looks like they're going to queue up 5 15-minute lightning talks, so it looks like it'll be a fun evening of content. And that's it, so we'll get ready for our second presentation. So, Arjen obviously needs no introduction, but here he is.
Thanks for that non-introduction, Rob. Cool. So, in a couple of weeks, it's all Fargate. Today, I'll be looking at Image Builder instead. This is, for those of you who don't know it, a service from AWS for building your images. In fact, I'm heading a bit ahead of my slide. Hi, I'm me. If you are very new here, you haven't seen me before, but you've heard my name plenty of times today, so I don't need to talk about myself. So instead, we've got Image Builder. As I mentioned, Image Builder is in short a service to, in an automated fashion, build your EC2 AMIs, or AMIs if you're a barbarian. So it basically consists of a couple different things. Also, today I'll be mostly just showing the service itself. I'm not going to be showing a lot of slides. This is the last slide even. So we'll just go through how things are, how it works, and play around with it a little bit. There's a couple of parts to it. You've got pipelines, recipes, components, tests, and then obviously the images. So I figured instead of going through it like this, I will just show you what it looks like in the console, and we'll go from there. Usually I'd love to make this quite interactive, so ask questions, and at the end, Rob will be kind enough to ask them to me. The echo is solved. Good. So basically, as I said, no, I didn't explain it yet. Actually, when you start with Image Builder, it starts with the whole create an image pipeline idea. But instead of going all the way from there, let's look at the small pieces instead. So the small pieces are basically, if you've built an AMI before with a service like Packer, which is one I've used a lot in the past, and I've always kind of enjoyed, although the syntax can be a bit annoying. This is similar. So you basically, in a recipe, let me open a good recipe here. You will see it has components associated with it. In this case, I am just installing one of my apps. It's a simple Go application. This is definitely not a use case that you would usually do it for. In fact, if we just go through here, you can, so while you can create components separately, and I will show that in a bit, we first see how you actually would use it. First, we'll create a recipe where we use Amazon Linux. You have to select something, but also say, hey, always build the latest version. And yet you can use your own AMI ideas, but you still need to then select what kind of instance it is. So this is important for some of the components that come built in as, say, an OS update, which will be different across Samsung Linux, Windows, Ubuntu, or any of the other supported services. Now, if you remember at the start of the evening, Rob mentioned that you don't need to be kind to AWS all the time. I'll be honest here, and I think the interface for the image builder is pretty horrible, especially at moments like this, where you can only see 2, maybe 3 items on a 15-inch screen. Also, I would prefer if it defaulted to the things that I've built. So I can say install AWS tools. You can also have special tests. These are similar to components, and but we don't have. Actually, let's add one. Let's just test that it can do. It can set Crony, the time service from AWS. Or Crony isn't, but I'll create a recipe. then we've got a recipe here, and in turn, so you see here a version. Anytime you make a change, you will need to release a new version of your recipe. This can become a bit annoying if you look at it here, where yesterday when I prepared this lightning talk, it ran into a couple of issues while building, because it wouldn't be any fun if everything broke, or if everything worked the first time. Now, once you've got one, then you can create a pipeline from it. So, demo pipeline. Here, it's important. This is the IAM role that you, the IAM role that you select here is the IAM role that you give access to, that gets added to the instance that is used for building your images. So under the hood, obviously, or not even under the hood, because as you'll soon see, it will actually start an instance, and that instance needs a role that has access to both session manager, so SSM, which is the SSM instance core role, as well as one especially for image builder. If you don't have that, it will fail. You can set it up on a schedule, either manually to build it based on schedule, or the same thing but using cron expression. Just do manual for now, and let's say we'll want to run it on M5X large. It is a large 12 megabyte application, so obviously that needs as much memory as we can give it. You give it an SNS topic for setting up for the notifications. You see a link here for creating an SNS topic. Just click that and you will see that doesn't work. That's awesome, and that's why you'll need to create it manually the other way. You can set a VPC and subnets where it should build in. By default, it will use the default VPC even if you don't select anything, and then you don't. That is quite easy, and but most of the time you will want it to connect to things within your VPC or to your wider network. So that is something you might want to do. Troubleshooting settings are useful. The main one is if you are trying out things, you can decide, no, if it fails, just leave the instance running and I will have a look at it. This is especially good if you're just testing things, if your modules and things like that get a bit complex, you can untick that and suddenly your instance keeps running. Obviously, pay attention to that because you might lose it. Similarly, you could then associate a keypad to it, but if you gave SSM access, you can just use the session manager instead. Same way with logs, you can keep that running. Now, I'm not going to go there, so I'll just here. If you have license configuration, you can even attach that to the AMIs. You can give your AMI a name. So demo AMI. You can assign some tags. All the things. This part here, though, is probably what I like the most about the image builder, and that's the ability to deploy it to different regions. Now it will create an image in both APC Southeast 2 as well as US East 1. But even more than that, you can share it with other accounts. And that's pretty useful, especially if you use a central account to build your images. Like you have a shared CI/CD platform running in one account, and you need to be able to distribute these images to your non-production and production accounts, or you use it for all your different workloads. You can easily share it. You can build it once, and you are assured that it will run in the different accounts. Quick review. Nothing exciting there because I didn't do anything exciting. We create the pipeline. That takes a moment or two. Yep. Cool. And then obviously we can run it. Cool. It runs, and at some point it will start showing up here with a new instance. Not yet. Takes a moment or two to get started, and I'll be honest, even just for running a simple thing as this, it takes a while. So yesterday when I ran it, it took about 25 to 30 minutes to build the AMI. But in all fairness, that means it will start the instance, install everything you ask it to. It will then take a snapshot of the instance, spin up an AMI, spin up a instance using that new AMI, and run any tests that you configured, including the tests from just standard tests for, hey, does this image even spin up? So, and then of course, afterwards, it needs to be shared to other regions and all accounts. Now, all of this is nice-ish, but the real meat is usually in the components themselves. So, basically, one of the things I like CloudFormation. So what I did here, I've built it into CloudFormation because CloudFormation support for this came actually out earlier this month. I didn't include it in the What's New section because I was going to mention it here anyway. And CloudFormation support is always a good thing. Now, the components themselves are basically this part here. Looks like real, where you defined it all as a YAML config. Obviously, you can also import it. Sorry, it's not obvious, but you can also import the data from, say, an S3 bucket. But in that case, so in case you want to make it part of your build pipeline, for example. Generally, there are a couple of steps you would include. You have a build step, which can do the things you want it to. Now, AWS has several options for the actions that you can take. You see here, execute bash. This is what I usually use because I'm a bit of a control freak in that regard and just want to make sure that everything gets done well, the way that I want it. But you can execute binaries, PowerShell if you are running on a Windows AMI, reboot, run an update OS, download, upload things from S3, or even set the registry if in Windows. So in that regards, it's all fairly straightforward. Here, all the commands are simply call commands. Please, though, remember that when you run this, it will actually start things. It will use the SSM run command. That means it will use the basic SSM user, which in turn does not have access to things like user bin. So if you want to put your files there, remember to use sudo or equivalent things depending on the system you're using. Now, also mentioned tests before. Basically, if you just want to run a test, all you need to do is limit the phases to a test instead of a full suite. So believe that it might have a different CloudFormation type, but I honestly don't remember right now. But that's in rough terms how it goes. It is pretty straightforward. Like I said, well, we can have a quick look at the images that have been built. Look here at demo for the user group, we see it's building. So at this stage, you don't see a lot of information here. You can see the pipeline configuration, any settings you gave it, but nothing else. Of course, if we look here, we can see it has started the build instance for demo for user group. These instances always get a name, build instance 4, and once it does a test, it will become test instance 4. They're running. We can sneakily just connect through it using Session Manager, and then we can see if it's doing things yet, and can see it's in progress, which is nice. In the same way, you can, of course, just like always, get the system logs, except, yeah, there's a delay there. System logs will still be available after a while, and so system logs will still be available after the instance gets shut down. So even if you forgot to uncheck the box for the don't shut it off afterwards, you can use that. And one reason you might want that is because if we look at some of my tests from yesterday, you will see these completely unreadable error messages in here. This does not make for a good debugging experience. So even if you go into it, it stays that way. Now, what you can do, as I said, it uses System Manager. So, also, it uses the run command. So instead of patiently trying to uncover what it actually said, we can just look at a failed instance, click through it, and have a slightly better output. In this case, the access denied exception was because I did not listen to my earlier advice about having the IAM roles set up properly. and that meant it couldn't access Image Builder. No. As you can see, right now it has been running. Yes, unfortunately, the interface does not look at your current time zone, so you get to calculate plus 10 hours. Now, if we go back here to our image, it's still building, and quite frankly, it's going to take a while. It has stopped now, so once it's stopped, it's taking the snapshot and building the AMIs, and we're not going to wait until it's completely finished. Just show you can now see the system logs. Well, there isn't that much useful information, but it might still be useful for debugging some issues. Let me switch back to my very last slide. I've mentioned all of this already. So while I definitely think Image Builder is a nice service, there are some things you should remember. First one said, I'll repeat it, get those IAM permissions correct. Secondly, it is quite slow. It takes a while. So don't expect it to be super quick. And yeah, the console is ugly. Avoid it. It now has CloudFormation support. That's good. The CloudFormation is not perfect, but it's better than nothing. One of the issues with the CloudFormation, for example, is this version thing. Versions and names need to be unique, so you get to listen. You will need to frequently update this. If I built a proper template here, I would have made the version a parameter, and that would be easy. But the downside, of course, is it's CloudFormation. If it doesn't see something, and for components, at least everything is, any change is a replacement action, it will try to delete the old version, which, if it's used in pipelines and things like that, will give you a wonderful rollback if delete failed. This takes a while, as you can see, until it realizes that it's not too bad, about 10 minutes. And then the old version and the new version are both available, but obviously this is not quite the experience you would want. And that's it for now. As I said, there is no real point in waiting for this to finish. It's going to take a while. I can quickly show that one that I did earlier works. I connect to it. I have my little application there. This easily fits in any Lambda or Fargate container, but it's good to have a wide open space for it. So with that, I think I'm happy to answer some questions. I think you're on mute, Rob.
I am. I have too many microphone controls. Thanks, Arjen. That was really good.
Cool.
I remember way back in the day that we used to be really grateful that AWS would build services API first, so that, you know, the functionality was there even if they didn't provide an interface. Now we just kind of wish that they would get the interface right as well.
Yeah.
I also remember building my EC2 images from hand, so this is a welcome addition. Right,
It's definitely better than that.
Yeah, definitely. I've got one question from the chat, but before that, I've got one from me. How does this experience compare in your experience to the tools available for Docker and containers and that sort of stuff?
So generally, one of the phases. So when you use something like Docker, it's it's faster for one, for obvious reasons, because it doesn't have a lot of overhead, and you can easily run things on your local machine. Here, you need to build it all in the cloud. If there's an error, you'll have to provide a new component. You have to build all your pipelines all over again, and it's a bit of a hassle in that way.
Could you say
on the other hand,
with your pipelines in Docker before moving it over? Like make sure your commands run? I don't know.
Yes, there's some, it depends on which image you use, of course. And for something like Windows instances, this is probably easier anyway.
Yep. Okay, so we had one question from the chat, which I can't now see. So Jonathan asks, I guess I could use this to install the SSM agent on the EKS optimized AMI. Is that a good idea? Yes,
that is a good idea, because you want the SSM agent on there, and it is complete nonsense that it doesn't come by default.
Well, at least we can use AWS tools to fix AWS gaps.
Yeah. On the other hand, it means you need to regularly run it whenever they update that image. So you need to take that into account.
Cool. Well, that was all of the questions that we have for that. Thank you very much, Arjen. Thanks for everything tonight as well. It's been a very busy night. Will you be there in the post live stream drinks?
I'll be there.
Cool. Yeah. I'll see you there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so that's it for another month. Hopefully everything worked out all right. We had a little bit of an audio echo there in the middle, but that seemed to be okay. Or was resolved easy enough. Let me just close off my slides here. So our next event then will be the 24th of June. It is June already. All indications are at this stage that it's going to be an online event again. I see no reason why we would even take the risk to go back just for some free beer and pizza. For our future events, when we do actually get back into NAB, we will make sure that the live stream continues to be a first-class experience. Like, you won't miss out anything from not being there. You still get just as good as what we're doing now, hopefully, actually at the event. So yes, the 24th of June, we already have we have two presentations lined up for that month already. It's looking like it's going to be a fantastic month, so I encourage you to look out for those links. A huge thanks again to our sponsors, Enabler, AC3, and CMD. We definitely couldn't do these without you. And that's it. If you want to join us on Zoom for a post live stream debrief / drinks / social gathering and talking and stuff, there is a link in Slack, or there would have been if I had hit post. Now there is a link in Slack. So jump on there and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.